draft picks. The only other thing that I'll say about the Bucks that I think is important is, are you familiar with 1972 when they could have had the Big O, Kareem, Julius Erving, Big Three?
No.
So, little history lesson here. 1972, 1972. The Bucks had just won a championship, and they had 2 picks in the first round. Back then, they only had like 15, 16 picks in the first round, and they had fresh off a championship. They'd only been in the league for 4 years, right? This is important, James. So just bear with me. They had 25-year-old Kareem, first ring in his prime. They had Oscar Robertson, who was an all-star, 33 years old. He was a little past his prime, but he was still an all-star. And Dr. J was on the Virginia Squires and the ABA. So they had 2 picks in the first round. The final pick, which I think was the 16th, and like the 12th pick. And they took Dr. J, who was they had his eligibility. He was in Virginia, but he hadn't gone to the NBA. So they drafted 22-year-old Dr. J out of UMass. He was playing in Virginia. They got into a contract squabble, and he had actually signed a deal with the Hawks, and they went to like arbitration. They had some hearings. Ultimately, the judge ruled that he was the Bucks' property, but they argued and argued and argued. Eventually, they lost the draft rights. He ended up going to the Nets. But, man, they would have had Kareem in his prime, Dr. J in his prime, and Oscar Robertson. Would have been one of the greatest big threes of all time, and probably doomed their franchise for another 40 years. So I just felt that was important to bring up because it changed the whole trajectory of their franchise.
All right, I give it to you. That's pretty interesting. That was a good one. I give it to you.
Hey, man, could have had Dr. J.
I was ready to roast you for having a terrible waste of my time. That was good.
No, man, 1972 could have been the start of a Bucks legacy, but we can move on to their draft picks.